What makes Deadpool Deadpool? The red suit is iconic, his panels tend to get a bit bloodier than your average Marvel comic, and of course he has that insatiable hunger for chimichangas. But if you said breaking the fourth wall, well, that's probably the right answer. There are plenty of heroes with a healing factor, plenty that use guns, and plenty that always try to crack jokes. But very few of them break the fourth wall, addressing the reader and acknowledging that they are, in fact, a fictional character in a comic book. And no one does it quite like Deadpool.
Oh, so it's gonna be one of those games, huh?
When High Moon Studios took a crack at making a Deadpool video game, the team had the tough challenge of doing all those fourth wall breaks in a totally different medium. There are certainly other examples of this. Something like the Stanley Parable is the first wall-breaking or meta game that comes to many people's minds. But still, the interactivity that comes with playing a video game makes breaking that fourth wall just that much trickier.
So how does Deadpool do it? Let's find out.
Before I dive too deep into Deadpool, I should give you the elevator pitch. Let's start in the shallow end of the Deadpool, if you will. I don't want to call this a standard beat-em-up action game because that would be a little reductive, and I always try to stay positive on this channel. But there is a good variety of tools at your disposal, and a not so good variety of enemies. Deadpool can wield a range of melee weapons, guns, and explosives, and he has a sweet teleporting dodge that I will liken to Elden Ring's Bloodhound Step as a flimsy excuse to mention that game again. Anyway, let's just say Deadpool is very creative, but also very of its time. Or out of its time. Personally, I'd call it the most 2004 game of 2014. It has a very mid-2000s look, performance, Arkham Asylum-like counters, mandatory turret sequences, abundant QuickTime events, and a moderate amount of frat bro humor.
There we go. Now we're talking.
You might think that we were past some of that in our 2014 action games, and that's why I say it feels roughly 10 years out of phase. Funny enough, it also released almost exactly 10 years before the MCU's Deadpool and Wolverine movie. And wouldn't you know it, this game actually starts with a voicemail from Logan.
Got your message, and for the last time, no. You cannot take our Blackbird out for a joyride.
The game starts to wink at the player before we're even in control of Deadpool himself. The difficulty selection icons are pretty tongue-in-cheek, and the descriptions for each of the game's campaign missions even acknowledge that they are, in fact, text on a screen. This acknowledgement is where our analysis is going to start. From moment one, this video game knows that it's a video game, and it'll tell you as much. Deadpool has another voicemail from High Moon Studios president Peter Della Penna, who's returning the merc's call about the pitch for his game, the same one you'd be playing at that very moment. Then he can call up his own voice actor, the iconic Nolan North, to have a conversation about the role. He does a phenomenal job, by the way.
Yeah, well, fuck you, Nolan.
The game isn't shy about its comic book origins either. If you turn on the TV, you'll get a nice montage of Deadpool panels that quickly explain the origins of the merc with the mouth. This is a recurring acknowledgement that we'll see quite a lot in this video. Now, you might think that everything we've talked about so far is enough to quote-unquote break the fourth wall, but I've only used the word acknowledged so far, and there are good reasons for that. A video game demands more to truly capture the spirit of Deadpool's antics. Just think about this video, or anything else on my channel as an example. You know, and I know, that there's a direct narration talking over whatever game I happen to be showcasing. There's no hiding the fact that this is a video, and I am directly addressing you through it. So to truly break the fourth wall, I'd have to do something greater. I'd have to, make a cheap Wolverine costume and put myself on a YouTube page.
Kinda like this.
So the acknowledgement of the fourth wall just isn't enough for some media, especially a video game. Fortunately, the Deadpool game has a distinct pattern of raising the stakes that we can trace throughout the story, but we won't show all of it. There are definitely spoilers in here, but I've left out the game's final 2 chapters. So here's the pattern of Deadpool, or as I've started calling it, the Deadloop. Not to be confused with Deathloop, which is another rad game you should also play. Anyway, we start with the acknowledgement, stating that yes, we know we're playing a video game. Then we move on to properly breaking the game's fourth wall, doing something distinctly out of character from the world around us. Finally, we create a new reality, rewriting what's happening on screen to be something entirely different. I've made this loop into a lovely ABC pattern to make it easy to remember, and now we're gonna see it in action.
You know why I love the internet? Because it's just like me.
We've already gone over the acknowledgement part of the equation. Everything that happens inside Deadpool's apartment covers it. When we get into our first proper mission, we move on to the second phase, breaking the fourth wall properly. Our first mission is to get rid of Chance White, a douchebag media guy who makes for a perfectly hateable first target. We start in the sewers beneath his media skyscraper / penthouse, getting a little tutorial before setting up a bouncy castle. There is zero reason or justification for this in the moment, but as we'll soon see, this game has some stellar setup and payoff. In any case, Deadpool summoning a cardboard box and unpacking the bouncy castle definitely qualifies as a proper fourth wall break. The fight takes us through higher and higher floors of the news building as we battle White's thugs. Deadpool even calls for some theme music during a power outage, which we could easily label as another fourth wall break, since he's calling something new into the game world.
I need theme music.
In time, we reach the penthouse, fend off a helicopter, do one of the game's several mandatory turret sequences, and finally get our hands on Mr. White, whom we promptly chuck out the window. Good thing that bouncy castle was there, huh?
Setup and payoff, baby.
The cushy landing means White gets away, but it also leads us to our first instance of creating a new reality, the last step in our process. As Deadpool chases after Chance, he enters a top-down 8-bit section of the sewers that resembles an NES Zelda dungeon, complete with keys and chests. In-game, this is due to Deadpool blowing the budget with all his antics atop the penthouse, rocket launchers, helicopter hijackings, etc.
That's a death you can be proud of.
The result is a completely rewritten reality. This isn't inside Deadpool's head. The world around him is very much in an 8-bit mode now. And as we exit that chamber, the cycle resets. We go back to just playing a beat-em-up game. It's important to show how Deadpool can break the fourth wall, but it's also just as important to have moments where we're simply playing a video game. At the end of the day, that's what it should all boil down to for us players. Deadpool's regenerating health and the endless guards and botched X-Men clones are the perfect in-universe mechanics too. We get to heal between battles, and there's plenty of cannon fodder thanks to Mr. Sinister's experiments.
You are no longer any use to me, filthy.
But...
Speaking of Sinister, he's part of the next acknowledgement cycle. The first one was spread across a few missions, but from here on out, they're more condensed. So, after fighting the Marauder Arclight, we get hit with the nauseating blasts of her teammate Vertigo. It's during this time that we have to throw some good old-fashioned video game switches. Again, Deadpool comments on this. High Moon Studios really got away with a lot of lamp shading in this one, huh?
Clearly a video game. A powered down switch. Oh, what shall I do?
Soon after, we get our eyes on Sinister, the overarching bad guy for this game. This moment includes another comic book summary of the Master Manipulator. We're not going to stop him right now, but at least our fellow X-Force members show up to save us. Then it's off to Genosha to confront Sinister for real. Remember when Logan left a voicemail saying we couldn't fly the Blackbird? Well, guess who gets to do it this time?
Setup, payoff.
When we reach Genosha, the island that used to be a mutant paradise, we get another lovely comic book cutscene about our pal Wolverine. Like I said before, there are a lot of these. Toward the end of that level, we find ourselves in a big courtyard battle alongside Rob Liefeld's 90s baby Cable. After the skirmish, we need to destroy Sinister's big tower. Last time, Deadpool pulled that bouncy castle out of nowhere. This time, we get the Wheel of Insanity.
We could win $1 billion. Spin it to win it.
It's a fun excuse to dress up our platforming as we climb the tower, and it's where we get another clear breaking of the fourth wall. Up top, we find ourselves face to face with Mr. Sinister once again, and this time he can't get away. We beat him up, we blow up the tower. Boom, game over, roll credits. Or don't. According to Cable, that was just a clone of Mr. Sinister. To get this through Deadpool's thick skull, he uses a taco analogy, and we get our next instance of creating a new reality. Now, you could look at what you're seeing on screen right now and just label it as the creative liberty of the team at High Moon. You could say we're just seeing Cable through Deadpool's eyes as he talks about delicious tacos. Both of those are valid, and they'll come up again later. But the bottom line is, this is a big stylistic break from everything that just happened, and therefore, it creates a new reality for at least us, the players. It's about the presentation.
Deadpool, quit fooling around! I can't hold on like this!
And when we reach the prison, the iconic mutant Rogue is presented to us with another one of those flashy comic book sequences. Yes, those really are the main way the game acknowledges itself. And so the cycle starts again. In fact, the prison level has 2 full sequences, arguably more. Pacing isn't really this game's strong suit, but that's beside the point. The marauder Blockbuster nabs Rogue, so we chase after him. The next break comes when Deadpool stumbles into a glitchy room with T-posing guards. It's mostly just a sight gag, but it's an important step along this repeating pattern, especially since the visuals start changing again as we get closer to Rogue's location. We find ourselves at a pool party, loaded with all the babes that Deadpool loves to go gaga for.
So, if I flip a coin, what are my chances of getting tail?
Hey, I told you the game gets juvenile. The important thing is that we see this party for what it is, another creation of a new reality. This setup is clearly a world apart from the Genoshan prison we've been running and gunning through thus far. The illusion also serves as an excellent way to frame Rogue being kidnapped by Blockbuster, as he stands like a bouncer in front of her in the VIP section. Of course, it's not long before Deadpool is snapped back to reality with another big brawl. Following this, we get more of the usual commentary, until we reach another fourth wall break. Apparently the tutorial sewers weren't enough. This prison has them too. To cross the river of crap, we hop across Deadpool's actual thought bubbles. That's a very succinct example of how the fourth wall break brings new things into our world. The thought bubbles are given physical form, becoming platforms for us. By the time we actually reach Rogue, we fought through the rest of the sewers, planted a bunch of bombs, killed another Sinister clone, and confronted Blockbuster himself. You know, normal video game action stuff. Ultimately, however, we find ourselves in control of Rogue, and this is a very clear creation of a new reality.
Now that's what I call a kiss, sugar.
Holy shit! We're in her head now!
Now, if you ask me, that whole scene was in Deadpool's woozy head as he started slipping away, and the ensuing fight is him watching Rogue come to his defense as he slips into unconsciousness. Either way, it's a new reality for us players, as we take control of an X-Man and kick more mutant clone butt. Besides, it's not like Deadpool can actually die. Okay, maybe he can get pretty close. And that's the game's cue to introduce Death, Marvel's personification of, death. She's also another one of Deadpool's super crushes. And yes, we get more acknowledgement of all this in another comic book montage. This Catacombs level also starts with a ton of meta dialogue about a lever that opens a door for the minecart. That totally fits the bill too.
Pull that lever to open the gate. Okay, I'm pulling this lever right here to open the gate. Which lever? This lever.
Now, the next fourth wall break is optional, but it adds a lot more to the upcoming final part of the process. When the catacombs start, we can defend our severed body by shooting a bunch of explosive red barrels. Once we've reassembled ourselves, we can start playing with that red barrel machine some more, eventually glitching it out entirely. It's a fun, inconsequential thing, but it's worth doing before we take our minecart ride. In the following section, Death tasks us with bottling up 3 lost souls down here in the catacombs. Here's the fun part. The paths to each one of those souls have their own new realities to create. There's a whole lot of payoff to this pattern that we've been following. Ghost Portal 1 leads us to a 2D platforming section. There are other moments like this in the game, but they're brief, really just small camera adjustments at the end of the day. This is much more involved, feeling like a full-on 2D level that ends with a fight against that red barrel blaster from before. It's a simple fight, one that could barely be called a boss battle, but it's a nice throwback to the thing that we glitched out earlier. Behind door number 2 is a series of fortune-telling Deadpool heads. I'm not going to try to justify this chamber, because it's definitely the weirdest one in my book, but I will say that it absolutely gives us another new reality to explore. One head has an Alice in Wonderland inspired shrinking and growing puzzle for us to solve, another has an increasingly silly list of questions, and the last one summons a bobble-headed version of a pizza guy for us to gun down. I don't even know how to justify all that in-game, but I do know that I was never bored while playing this section. The same goes for the final ghost chamber, which turns out to be a shooting gallery. More than any other acknowledgement, fourth wall break, or new reality in this game, this section is unquestionably a representation of what's going on inside our hero's head. We don't need to have the semantic argument of what counts as the fourth wall or not, but the game is very clear in its imagery here. We get a look at Deadpool's fear of clowns and love of bikini babes, his traumatic memories of being experimented on during the Weapon X program, and some happier thoughts involving his pal Wolverine and their action-packed adventures together. It might all be a bit on the nose, but that doesn't make it any less fun.
I guess you could say this is a metaphor for all the messed up shit in my head.
Now, let's break our own loop and wrap this up, shall we? Breaking the fourth wall in a video game is hard, at least if you want to do it right. Simply acknowledging that you're playing a game isn't enough. It's not witty on its own merit, and players expect more. I could liken it to my YouTube videos again. Unless I could edit this in real time or somehow show up in your house to read the script directly to you, I couldn't do it.
Turn around, bub. I'm kidding, these are just kitchen knives. Please don't call the cops.
So I have to give props to High Moon Studios for finding a fun, reliable pattern for pulling this off. As I've shown you across most of the game, Deadpool acknowledges what it is, then deliberately breaks the fourth wall by bringing in outside elements before ultimately creating a new reality, completely rewriting what's happening on screen to suit the narrative. It's a brilliant cycle that raises the stakes every time, leaving the player guessing as to what's coming next. Of course, if you want to find out what happens in the final chapters, you already know I would encourage it. If there's one thing I love, it's knowing that something I said convinced you to give a game a try. And if there's one thing Deadpool loves, it's chimichangas. And guns, and death.
You've done more than you know. Don't speak. Just kiss me.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what I'm doing here on Framework, please hit that subscribe button in the middle. It would help me out an awful lot if you do. And if you want to see the videos I've already cooked up, you can hit that link on the far left. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.